miles east-northeast of Nassau with winds of 45 miles per hour. And it is moving toward the north-northwest at 8 miles per hour. And it does look like we're going to see maybe a more westerly component to that wind eventually, or that movement, I should say, eventually. And that would take it into southern Florida. That's what we're expecting. And pressure 1,003 millibars. And we are already seeing a lot of heavy rain here across the Bahamas. And we expect that heavy rain to spread into Florida. And with the slow movement of this system and the potential for that slow movement, we could see devastating amounts of rain in some areas. Well, we do have hurricane advisories in effect, and they are hurricane watches. And here's what we're seeing as we zoom on into southern Florida, where hurricane watches in effect from Vero Beach down toward Florida City. Of course, also a number of tropical storm advisories, including tropical storm warnings from Vero Beach to Florida City, as well as the central and northwest Bahamas. Well, as I mentioned, we are seeing a lot of heavy rain with this system already really coming down here around Nassau and throughout the Bahamas, and we will see those clouds and that rain eventually spreading into southern Florida. That includes Miami, so look out for very heavy rain. We're talking about the possibility of 10 to 12 inches of rain, maybe locally 20, depending on how quickly the system moves. If it stalls out, obviously we're going to see heavier rain, but again, the slow movement thus far means that we are going to see some substantial amounts of rain. We see scattered storms right now across southern Florida, but look at what's off to the east, and we see that sort of that big batch of rain associated with Katrina. That's going to head into Fort Lauderdale and into Miami, and it is going to be a messy, soggy time for you here in Florida as we see this as the projected path of Katrina, and we see it again taking a more westerly turn here, and that is going to take it right on into southern Florida sometime Thursday night or Friday morning, and we think that it will be either a strong tropical storm or a weak hurricane. There is the possibility that we could see further strengthening, as it is a tropical storm now, could become a hurricane. We'll watch it as it moves across Florida, headed back out into the Gulf. What it does at that point, still not certain. So all interest here in the Gulf need to keep a close eye on it, and we'll keep you updated at 50 past each hour in the tropical update. Out across the rest of the Atlantic, watching an area of
And Steve, is Katrina intensifying right now?
Well, it sure looks like, based on the radar imagery, it looks like it's a little stronger than a 50-mile-per-hour storm. We'll have to wait for the advisory to come out, and unfortunately we don't have an aircraft out there right now to get a special and have the system upgraded more quickly. But still moving west at 8, about 70 miles east of Fort Lauderdale, at least at 8 a.m., so that was a little while ago. So it's still got a ways to go to the coast. And look at the radar signature now. Look at a well-defined circulation center there, and that's indicating that the circulation is trying to organize and form an eye. If that's the case, it's trying to get a hurricane intensity with it. The good news so far is that the strongest rain area has been offshore, so most of Florida has not felt much rain other than a few of these bands that have been transiting through. Now, in the meantime, up here in the Bahamas on this island, we've had wind gusts, sustained winds now to 45 miles an hour, and gusts higher than that, and that's not in the core of strong winds, which is right here. So we're expecting that the Hurricane Center will probably have this system much stronger at 11 a.m. than it is right now. Now let's look at some of the impacts overall of what's going to happen here. First of all, the overall wind impacts, even if it becomes a hurricane, relatively low, but I'll tell you what that's going to be in a second. Rainfall is a big potential problem here, and if it slows down, we could have very high rainfall potential and significant flooding in some areas. Wave and surge is relatively low. We're going to have some 8 to 12-foot surge. Now let's look at the tree and power line potential. Expect some power outages near landfall. That's almost a given, even with a tropical storm. Don't expect anything relative to direct damage from the wind to be anything significant. The structures are built pretty well in South Florida. It's going to traverse the South Florida Peninsula and then turn north. It may do it very close to the coastline. If it slows down, it's more likely to take this eastern track. If it speeds up, it'll take the center track or the western track. Right now, we're expecting it to be right in the middle of that cone is our best estimate. Now, let's look a bit farther out into the Atlantic. Here's our tropical storm here trying to reach hurricane strength before it gets to the coast. What in the world is this giant thing out here?
Tropical storm